All right, you have a take on the U.S.-Japanese thing?
Well, yeah, I do. As we look at the types of computers we're building today and projecting in the next few years, a disturbing fact is that even though most of the computers are assembled here in the United States, a significantly large number of the dollars that one pays for the components of those computers, to build those computers, flows overseas. The most expensive part of many computers is the display, whether it be a color cathode ray tube or whether it be a flat panel display. And almost all of those dollars flow to Japan. One of the second most expensive component in most computers is the dynamic memory. And again, most of those dollars flow to Japan. The third most expensive component is the hard disk drives. And most of those dollars flow to US companies, even though the disk drives are mostly built in Singapore. And one of the things I think we need to keep our eye on the ball of is to manage those most expensive components back to America. And I think that that's going to take some real effort, especially in the display and the DRAM area. It's going to take some effort because those are capital-intensive products. The factories to build displays or DRAM are now costing $500 million to $1 billion a piece. And the engineering required is also something that one doesn't build up overnight. But it's, I think, essential that we don't continue to be hollowed out as an industry, where even though the assembly of the final products, the printing of the manuals, the bow on the shipping carton gets tied here in the U.S., most of the dollars don't get sent across the shores.
You're in a very fortunate position because you are privately held, and you don't have to worry about the quarter-to-quarter problems that some of your publicly traded brethren have to worry about. How much of what you're talking about is a result not so much of the advances being made by the Japanese, but by the impediments that exist in the American capital structure in terms of investment disincentives for long-term capital holdings, in terms of the quarterly outlook of the Wall Street analysts and so on?
Well, I don't really buy that argument, and let me give you some reasons why. If I'm going to build a factory and it's going to cost $100 million, that factory doesn't get written off the minute I build it. That factory is an asset on my books, just like cash in the bank is. It gets depreciated over many, many, many years. So that decision to build that factory doesn't really affect my earnings statement. It affects my balance sheet because I take $100 million of cash and put it into a $100 million factory. But it doesn't affect my earnings and shouldn't affect what Wall Street views are my prospects or my results. And I think that the real problem has not been with Wall Street, it's been with the management of our industry. It's been with people not being willing to take responsibility for the underlying component technologies and thinking that we could give that responsibility to others and survive in just as successful of a fashion, which is not true. Industry after industry has shown us that that's not true. So we have to have more accountability for our raw technologies and not just assume that we can be the final packager at the end, because ultimately the providers of those components don't need the final packager at the end. Ultimately they can go directly to the consumer. And they have relationships with the consumer already, as Sony does and others in Japan.
I mean, so Sony, the builder of the next Apple portable, next Mac portable?
Ask John Scully.
I'm going to.
So I don't really think saying it's Wall Street is too easy. We've got Apple, we've got IBM, and many other computer companies with hundreds of millions, if not billions of dollars in the bank in cash. Raising the capital is not the problem, and Wall Street is not the problem. The problem is that in many cases, the management of our companies is not from an engineering or manufacturing background anymore, and may not appreciate the dependence we have on these underlying technologies. Is where if you go to Japan, the people running these companies are engineers or they're from the manufacturing backgrounds, and they very much appreciate.
Is that why U.S. memories failed?
I don't know. I don't know anything about U.S. memories.
That was the
yeah, I know.
Yeah. All right, I think that
So,
pretty much covers.
Thanks.
Oh, excuse us, Steve.